Hi, I'm Josh Williams. I'm the head coach at Ronin Training Center for the Advanced MMA program. Today you're going to find out a little bit more about me and the program here at Ronin.
Hi, Josh. How long have you been training MMA?
I got started in MMA in 1995, which would have been around, I'd say like UFC 3. I was 15 at the time. I got started basically how everybody got started back then, just mimicking moves, practicing, trying to do all the stuff that Royce Gracie did. I trained on my own throughout high school, and when I got to college, I went to Ohio State and did some training at a jiu-jitsu club, and eventually transitioned and walked onto the OSU judo team. Competed on the judo team for the next 4 years, and then made my MMA debut. Started fighting. I fought for another couple of years, and right around then, I started doing a little bit of coaching as well. Then, after a handful of fights, I transitioned from fighting to coaching full time, and I've been coaching since then. So, altogether, in MMA, I've been doing it for about 25 years. I've been coaching for somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
How long have you been teaching at Ronin?
I've been coaching at Ronin since I think 2012, so 7 or 8 years now. Long enough to have a pretty decent impact on the program, I would hope.
What got you started in teaching and training MMA?
I got started teaching and coaching MMA because my time as a competitive athlete was pretty much over. My son had just been born. I had already had 2 ACL reconstructions on my right knee. So I was kind of getting towards the end as far as what my body could hold up to as a competitive athlete. So with some coaxing from my wife and family, I was talked into putting more of my attention to coaching. And I figured, why half-ass it and be a part-time coach, part-time fighter, where I suffer both as a fighter and as a coach. I would rather devote myself 100% to one of those two things. And since I couldn't be a fighter anymore, I put my devotion 100% towards coaching, and that's where I've been ever since.
Who's your favorite fighter in MMA?
Oh, my favorite fighter in MMA, boy, that's a loaded question because I've been around since the very beginning. Let's talk about eras. How about that? There's different eras of MMA. The very beginning, the Royce Gracie era, obviously Royce had the biggest impact on me when I first started. Then as things branched off and new skills started to come in, I was a big fan of Don Fry, who combined judo with college level wrestling, decent boxing background. Marco Huas, Maurice Smith. Then as we got later on, my more up-to-date champions that I like would be Max Holloway, John Jones, Israel Adesanya, George St. Pierre, the guys who have had the greatest impact on the sport.
Do you have a favorite female fighter?
Yeah, my favorite female fighter is Ronda Rousey. I know a lot of people are going to give me a hard time for it, but Ronda kind of paved the way for women's MMA. And kind of a weird comparison. I always kind of liken her. Ronda, to me, was like the female equivalent of Mark Coleman when he first came in. Mark was kind of represented the first upper level, high level world class athlete, with as well as a world class like a skill level as far as wrestling came in. Ronda was the same way. She represented a higher level of athlete coming in for the women's division, as well as a completely different skill level as far as a grappler for the women at the time. And she just rolled through everybody for probably the first generation. And it wasn't until her skill set got caught up with that she ended up taking her first loss. But as far as from the beginning, definitely Ronda. Since then, my favorite to this day right now is probably Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
What do you feel is the biggest thing that holds a student back from progressing?
For an MMA fighter, students starting off, I'd say the very first thing that we got to get over with everybody is realizing that you're way more durable than what you think. The human body is incredibly capable of taking punishment to survive and come back. So the very first thing that I like students to know when we first start is you're not made out of glass. You're way more durable than you expect. You can take way more punishment and come back from it and keep going. So that's the very first thing, is realizing you can take a beating to give a beating. You can survive. Once we get past that and you don't panic, you realize that you're durable, then we can start building from there.
What makes Ronin different in Columbus versus all the other gyms?
Ronin is different from all the other gyms in Columbus just due to the talent level. At any given time, you can come into this gym and you've got world-class instruction in jiu-jitsu, in judo, in boxing, in Muay Thai, in MMA. We have some of the best coaching available in every single little individual style. And then, not to mention the coaching, you've got all the talent as far as what's on the mat. All right, come in for any of the grappling classes, you're going to see an assassin's row of guys competing. I have a bunch of stud MMA fighters that compete for us. We have some really good Muay Thai fighters. Every single class you can go into, it's not like you're just in there with a bunch of newbies. You're in there with a bunch of killers.
What is your biggest achievement?
My biggest achievement as a coach so far has been taking fighters that have absolutely zero background in anything and coaching them through the fundamentals all the way up to being amateur and some professional champions. To be able to take somebody from knowing absolutely zero, coming in off the street with zero skills whatsoever, just maybe a little bit of athleticism, and being able to teach them all the way up through to where they're a successful fighter is impressive. All too often you see people who are, they build off of other coaches' accomplishments. So they get an athlete who's already a really good wrestler, a really good jiu-jitsu person, a really good fighter from somewhere else, and all they do is put their little stamp of approval on them, make a couple little adjustments, and this person comes out and does well, and they take all the credit. I like to think that the guys that I've trained that have done well, I've built them from scratch. It's not like I'm taking credit for somebody else's work.
What is your coaching style?
My coaching style is very similar, I would say, to a Bruce Lee kind of approach, and that is I don't want to create carbon copies of myself. I have a very specific build, I have a very specific background, and asking everybody to do what I do is highly unrealistic. All right. My goal is to see what the student comes to the table with, what skills they have, what skills they gravitate towards, and what they pick up quickly, and then build a system based around what they do well, eliminate the holes, eliminate the weaknesses, and build off of their strengths. So I want everybody to be good at whatever they do, whatever they gravitate towards, not necessarily what I do.
What do you recommend students to do outside of their MMA training to improve?
For any students who are doing MMA, you've got to take the time outside of the gym to get your diet right, get your strength and conditioning in, and to recover. Those are the three things that most amateur fighters and even most pro fighters they drop the ball on. They train like madmen. They'll do 2-a-days, sometimes even 3-a-days in the gym, putting in the training. But the second they walk out the gym doors, that's the end of their discipline. It completely goes out the window. The guys who do well are the guys who are disciplined in the gym and out of the gym when they're home. So when they're not here, if they've been training hard, they make sure to get their recovery time. They make sure to eat and drink good foods, healthy foods, get plenty of hydration in their system. They make sure they get plenty of rest so they can recover and come in the next day instead of burning the candle at both ends. And since most of the guys that we have doing this sport are younger people who can get away with that kind of lifestyle, they fall into that habit real quick unless we put a stop to it. So that's the big thing for me, is getting the person who's going to be dedicated, not just when I'm watching them and can correct them, but even they're dedicated when nobody's watching them, when they're by themselves, when nobody can scold them for getting up in the middle of the night, going down and getting a sandwich out of the refrigerator. All right, that's when the guys who are really successful, they are the ones that show discipline.
Where do you see your team in the next few months, years?
In the next few months, I see my team coming back in off of COVID-19, awfully fat, out of shape. So we're going to spend a little bit of time just trying to recover, not get sick again. Hopefully, 2020 was supposed to be a great year for us. I think it still will if we can get back to the gym sometime soon. That's all kind of up in the air right now. But I think once we get back to the table, get back to the work again, we'll be able to pick up where we left off. It'll be a little bit of an adjustment, getting everybody's timing back, getting everybody back to shape again. But once we get back to work, I think it's going to pick up quick, and we're going to have a banner year.
Anything else you want to say?
Stay safe out there, guys. Wash your hands. Don't hang out with too many people. Just do the smart thing. I know everybody is itching to get back to work, both with their job as far as getting back to work, make money, and then getting back to work in the gym. Take your time. Don't rush it. Don't get yourself sick. Don't get your family sick. Don't get your training partner sick. All right? Let's get past this, and then we all come back in fresh in a month, 2 months down the road.